There is a firefighter in Bozeman, Montana. He was born there, raised there, spent 10 years on the department responding to calls in the same neighborhoods where he learned to ride a bike. He saved money, he did everything right, and in 2021, he put in an offer on a house $15,000 over the asking price and lost it in 24 hours to a buyer who had never set foot in Montana. The buyer was not richer by accident. He worked in software. He lived in Seattle. When his employer went fully remote, he looked at what his salary could buy in Montana compared to what it bought in Washington, and he made a rational choice. He closed in cash within a week. The firefighter is still renting. That one lost bid is not an anomaly. It is a new math that most people have not named yet, and it is quietly making millions of Americans financially unable to return to or remain in the towns where they grew up. For most of American history, the small town was the escape valve. Cities were where the money was, but cities were also expensive, crowded, and exhausting. The unspoken social contract was this: if you could not compete in New York or San Francisco, you could still own something, raise your family, and build a stable life somewhere quieter and cheaper. The small town was affordable by design, not because of charity, but because the economic gravity of those places was local. You earned local wages. You paid local prices. The system was in balance. That balance is gone. The income needed to afford a home in rural America has increased by 106% since 2019. Local wages grew by 33% over the same period. The median rural home price has risen 60.5% from $175,000 to $280,900. The income required to afford that home has nearly doubled. The typical rural family now earns less than what it takes to afford the median home in their own county. That is the definition of an affordability crisis. It used to be a city problem. Now it is everywhere. The immediate cause begins in March 2020. A pandemic shuts down offices nationwide. Millions of white-collar workers are sent home. Within a few weeks, they discover something unexpected. The work still gets done. And slowly, then all at once, a question emerges that had never been seriously asked before. If the work still gets done, why does it need to happen in San Francisco? For the first time in American history, a San Francisco salary did not require living in San Francisco. Consider the arithmetic. A software engineer in Seattle earns $130,000 a year. A teacher in Bozeman, Montana earns $46,000. Before March 2020, those two people never competed for the same house. The software engineer needed to be in Seattle. After March 2020, they are in the same market. The software engineer can borrow approximately $450,000. The teacher can borrow approximately $160,000. They are not bidding against each other. One of them is simply outbid before the bidding begins. By 2021, rural counties had gained a net 430,000 people. The reversal was so fast and so financially asymmetric that local housing markets had no mechanism to absorb it. Remote work was the spark. But it did not start a fire in an empty room. The room had been filling with fuel for years. Four forces were already in place when the pandemic arrived, and each one made the shock worse. The first is housing undersupply. Rural America stopped building homes after 2008 and never really started again. By 2022, the shortage had reached 456,000 units. In 2000, 79% of new rural homes were priced below $254,000. By recent years, that figure had collapsed to 19%. The affordable end of new construction had essentially disappeared. When the migration wave arrived, it hit a market that had been running on empty for over a decade. The second is what the Federal Reserve did to interest rates. In late 2020, the 30-year mortgage rate fell to 2.65%, the lowest in recorded history. A buyer who could afford to borrow $250,000 at 6% could suddenly borrow $325,000 at 3%, the same monthly payment. 30% more purchasing power. That amplification was most distorting in small rural markets where a modest income gap could outbid every local buyer simultaneously. The third is the short-term rental market. A two-bedroom apartment that rents for $1,200 a month on a long-term lease can earn $3,500 a month on Airbnb. The rational individual decision is obvious. The collective result is that in some vacation counties, only 55% of housing units are occupied by full-time residents. The rest turn over nightly while teachers and nurses drive an hour each way to get to work. The fourth is the mortgage lock in effect. When rates climb from under 3% toward 7% in 2022 and 2023, homeowners who had locked in low rates realized their monthly payment would nearly double if they moved. So they did not sell. A 1 percentage point increase in mortgage rates cuts the probability that a homeowner lists their property by 21 to 23%. When rates jumped 4 points, inventory collapsed. Prices stayed high because there was almost nothing to buy. These four forces hit simultaneously on top of a housing supply depleted for a decade. The firefighter was not competing against one remote worker. He was competing against all of this at once. Bozeman, Montana is where the numbers become impossible to ignore. The median home price there is now $979,500. That is more expensive than Seattle. The local median household income is $61,000. To afford the median home in Bozeman at a standard mortgage payment, a buyer would need to earn roughly $240,000 a year. The local median income is 1/4 of that. The teacher who grew up in Bozeman, who attended Bozeman schools, who went to Montana State and came back to teach in the district she came from, cannot afford to rent a one-bedroom apartment within 30 miles of her school. The town that shaped her, that she chose to give her career to, has economically closed its doors to her. She is not poor. She has a college degree and a professional salary. She is simply from there, which means her salary was set by the local economy, while the price of housing was set by an entirely different economy she was never part of. In Telluride, Colorado, a town of 2,600 people, the school district borrowed $31,800,000 in municipal bonds to build housing for teachers, because market rate one-bedroom apartments there rent for $4,000 to $5,000 a month. The community took on $31 million in debt because the only solution was for the government to build the housing itself. When essential workers cannot live in the towns they serve, the consequences are not abstract. The firefighter who cannot afford to live in the town he works in is a 4-minute drive from the station in normal conditions and a 30-minute drive in the snow. The nurse who commutes an hour each way is one bad weather event away from missing a shift that was already understaffed. When essential workers leave, what exactly are the newcomers living in? There is a group of people in this story who are often forgotten. They are not the firefighter who was priced out trying to buy. They are not the teacher who had to leave. They are the people who stayed, who never sold, who never moved, who owned their homes outright and thought they had earned their security. Property taxes on longtime homeowners rose an average of 27% nationwide between 2019 and 2024. Consider a couple in rural Montana retired, living on a combined Social Security income of $26,000 a year. Their home has been reassessed at $385,000 because remote workers drove up every comparable sale in the county. Their property tax bill is $5,800 a year. That is 22% of their total annual income going to the tax bill on a house they own outright. The homeowner who never sold, never profited, never participated in the frenzy still gets a property tax bill that reflects the frenzy. The market moved around them, and the state sent them the invoice. Their children face a version of the same trap. The son who grew up in that house, who left for college, who is now working in another city, wants to come back. He calls a realtor. The median home near his parents costs more than he can qualify for on his current salary. The house he grew up in is worth more than he can borrow. The equity his parents hold is locked inside a structure he cannot enter. The intergenerational thread has been cut. The family is intact. The connection is intact. The desire to stay rooted is intact. The economic mechanism that would allow rootedness to continue from one generation to the next has simply stopped working. The structural problem underneath all of this is that capital can move freely across geography, but people cannot. Capital follows opportunity. People are bound by jobs, schools, families, and roots that do not transplant easily. Remote work ended the geographic isolation that had kept small town housing markets calibrated to small town wages. When a San Francisco salary no longer required living in San Francisco, capital moved to where quality of life was highest at the price it could afford. The mechanism requires no greed. A buyer earning $130,000 a year with $200,000 in savings competing against a buyer earning $60,000 with $10,000 in savings will win every time, without trying, without meaning to. The seller accepts the higher offer, which the market produced automatically from the gap in purchasing power. The mechanism is clean and impersonal. That is precisely what makes it so difficult to fight. So why not just build more houses? Building more houses is not wrong, but approximately 75% of residential land in America allows only single-family homes by law. Duplexes, fourplexes, and apartment buildings, the types of construction that could add workforce housing at lower cost, are simply illegal on most land. And the homeowners who vote in local zoning decisions are the ones whose property values have risen. They have little incentive to advocate for the supply increases that might moderate those values. Building more houses is the right long-term answer, but the right long-term answer and the solution to a crisis that arrived in 18 months are not the same thing. What this actually is at its root is a geography of opportunity crisis. The buyer who purchased in 2021 on a 3% mortgage is already building equity on a house that has continued to appreciate. The renter who could not compete is still renting at rents that have risen with the market. The distance between them grows every year. The firefighter in Bozeman is still there. He still drives to the station. He still answers the calls. He commutes from a town 40 miles away now in a rental he found through a coworker. He has settled into the kind of tired that comes after you stop expecting things to change. He is from Bozeman. He will always be from Bozeman, but Bozeman is no longer a place he can afford to be from. For the first time in the history of this country, that sentence applies to millions of people simultaneously across thousands of towns with no safe exit in sight.